Hello everyone and welcome to Student Hub Live. You're here with Rob in the Study Shack again, and today I've got a whole range of guests from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, and they're here today to tell you all about the new modules that have been developed and why you should come and join in and take part. So in the chat we've got Tracy and Damon, and they're going to be answering your questions. So if you've got any specific questions about today's modules, drop them in there and they'll answer as many as they can, give you some useful links where to find out more information. And of course, we've got Heidi joining us, taking your comments and feeding back. So Heidi, who have we got online so far and what are they saying?
Hi, good morning, Rob, and hi to everyone. Gosh, we've got a busy show today, haven't we, Rob? I think this is one of the busiest. We've got so many guests. I think we're going to be exhausted after 90 minutes, but it's going to be brilliant. So, a few hellos in the chat then. Hannah's in Buckinghamshire, which is where I am, currently doing full-time study. She said, any tips from anyone who is also studying full-time, please do share them with her because she would love to have them. So we can perhaps touch on that if we've got time later. Francesca is in North Shield, says it's a bit dreary there this morning, studying English literature, which is what I did, yay, with the OU undergrad. Looking forward to studying her favourite author, Jane Austen. Karen is on the Isle of Wight, studying arts and humanities. We've got Erin in Belfast, who's studying BSc Honours Psychology, starting stage 2 in October. Graham is in the gorgeous west of Scotland studying for a BA Honours Arts and Humanities. And Zoe is studying open learn modules at the moment to keep her going before starting Q52, which is the BSc Environmental Science in October. Zoe did an access course last year with the OU and said it was really good. And Zoe is joining us in Herefordshire. So if you are just joining, pop your name in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from and what you're studying.
Excellent. Thank you, Heidi. And just to remind you all, you can keep in touch with us. You can use the chat that's on the screen. You can email us. You can use the widgets that are on the screen as well when they pop up. And you'll notice there are ticker questions that pop across the bottom of the screen as well throughout the session today. So all of my guests today are members of the module teams that have been developing the new qualifications. And you can find their biographies on the Student Hub Live page. They'll tell you a little bit more about the guests. So today we have with me, we have Warren, Carl, Suzanne and David, and hopefully Susie will be popping up fairly shortly. So it's a bit of a speed dating session today. We're going to find out lots about a lot of brand new modules. We're always working to develop new content and new courses. So we're going to go through, and each of you's got about 4 minutes to sell us your course and tell us why we should be coming to join you. And we're going to start with Warren. So Warren, I'm really interested in finding out about art and visual cultures in the modern world. So over to you. What's it all about?
Well, before I start selling the module, which is brilliant, by the way, it's very important to know that A236, Art and Visual Cultures in the Modern World, is one of 2 brand new second level courses in the brand new name degree in the History of Art and Visual Cultures at the Open University. So at the moment, we're all burrowing away writing new module content to make that name degree. So at first level, some of you will do A111, which is an introduction to arts and humanities. There's art history and visual cultures on that. Then you'll do A112, which is art history and visual cultures plus 3 other subjects. And then if you decide to do art history, then you can do one of 2 new second level courses. The one I'm chairing now, which we're in the production of finishing, is that one, A236, Art and Visual Cultures in the Modern World, which is looking at art and visual cultures from sort of mid-18th century through to the present. And then the other one, A237, looks at early modern art and visual culture up to the middle of the 18th century. And then if you go on to the third, if you like it so much doing these second level courses, then in the third year, you could do A344, Art and its Global Histories, which I also chaired, and then Art and its Critical Histories, which is a research module. So what is in A236 and why should you study it and what makes it so exciting, new, innovative? So it's got 5 blocks. Okay, the first one is about art and its institutions. So most of you would have been to art galleries or museums. So in that first block, we unpick what it is about these things in the modern world, which frame the way most of us relate to art in the modern world. What's very original about this course, I think, I'm sure of, is the second block is about art and visual. Is about visual cultures in the modern world. That could be scientific images, that could be advertising, that could be photography. And I think what's really useful about and interesting about that particular block is all of us take photographs of our mobile phones, selfies, family pictures, and it looks at how we approach such ephemeral imagery in terms of what we know about art history. So it's not just about images you'll see in art galleries and museums, it's thinking about the images we see in the everyday world, on our laptops, on our mobile phones, etc. And it thinks about those images in relationships to high art at museums and galleries. Then the third block is about art in the modern world, and that is more about how artists from particular kind of avant-garde subcultures, from impressionism through to contemporary artists, relate to particular moments, social forces in the modern world, and often try to produce works which are critical of that modern world that we live in. Another incredibly new aspect of how we're framing art history at this second level module is the fourth one, the fourth block in the 5 blocks, and that's about art in the past. So if we think about art and nostalgia, because one of the ways that we make sense of the modern world is thinking about how we think about the past. And so that could be the heritage industry, local architecture and design, etc. And then what is even more innovative, and I don't think it's ever been done in a art history degree at the art history module at the Open University, is block 5, and that's art and the Anthropocene. And of course, this is something which is incredibly relevant to all of us now in terms of environmental degradation, melting ice caps, etc. So block 5 looks at how relate relations between art and the environment go back to the 18th century. It could be looking at horses in Turner paintings. It could be looking at the way that skies are painted in Constable works, the works of Caspar David Friedrich, and brings it right up to the present in terms of contemporary artists who are producing works which directly tackle the subject of environmental decline and climate change. So I think I'll stop there. I
Yeah.
don't know how long I've
Yeah.
spoken for, but
No,
I'll
just
gladly
before you move
take
off,
the question. Yep,
before we move off, we'll have a few questions popped up in the chat.
of
What does
course.
anthropocene mean? So, quick definition.
Okay, Anthropocene. So we think about history in broad strokes. So we think about the Ice Age, etc. Well, the Anthropocene is a term that has been derived relatively recently, and it describes a particular moment in history where human impact upon the world is so severe that it's changing the nature of the world we live in. So it dates from the kind of Industrial Revolution up to now. So it's that critical moment where our imprint is having a massive effect upon how the Earth can reproduce itself. I hope that does that make sense?
No, that's fantastic. That's just what I think we wanted to know, because it sounded great when you were talking about it, but it was trying to link it up with a word that I wasn't familiar with. So, thank you for that, Warren. That was excellent. We're going to move on to Carl now. So, Carl, we're going to be talking about A328 and empires. So, what is it about empires, power, resistance, and legacies that should drive students to engage and study it? So what is it that excites you about this module?
Well, what excites me about using empire or studying empire in general is the scope. Of all the history modules, this is the one that allows you to do world history. It encourages you to think comparatively about empires from around the world and about the remarkable impact they've had over 6 centuries to present day. It covers from the early modern period until almost now and has empires as varied as the Aztecs, the land empires of the Ottomans and Mughals, and European seaborne empires, including, of course, the British. The second thing is about perspectives. So you'll obviously study power, how empires work, the experience of empire, traditional things such as how empires expand, and imperial culture. But one of the things that really excites me about this is that we're able to help you reverse gaze from ship to shoreline, from imperialist to subject. So we really want you to have access to sources that allow you to get the views and agency of the widest group of people possible: the enslaved, the resistance fighter, the local elite who may see empire actually as an opportunity for security, for profit, for prestige. So as well as hard power, this course allows you to look at the clash of cultures, the mixing of cultures, and of course individual cultures for their own sake. To give you one example of this, we cover the settlement of Australia, a very traditional topic, so Australian settlers, but we specifically focus on the same story through the Aboriginal eyes, or First Australians, from pre-contact culture and their knowledge of country, through contact and near genocide in some places, through to them demanding and attaining respect, land rights, and even a voice in modern Australia and its constitution. So in short, you get to do power, but also resistance, events, but also legacies, and take, if you like, a 360-degree view of empire. The third thing that's distinctive is community. We give you the chance to share some of your views with colleagues and to be co-teachers and co-learners on a regular basis. You don't need to worry about this. You only have to occasionally say, look at a document and do a short summary for colleagues who may then be able to post helpful comments. The idea is it gives you some sense of community at a very manageable pace, and you get to help each other and gain from each other's ideas. Finally, choice. We've been running A326 Empires, the predecessor course, for over 10 years. This course goes from kind of black and white to color, embeds more videos, but also students told us they wanted a little bit more scope to introduce their own choice of documents, of case studies, their own interests. So for the final end of course assessment in particular, it's now 4,000 words, and we ask very broad questions which allow you to employ case studies and sources you will have collected in further reading throughout the course, and so imbricate your own interests. That's about it from me. If there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Okay, so Heidi, a perfect opportunity for you to come in. Have we got any questions either for Carl or for Warren at this point?
We don't have specific questions that have come in. I think the audience have all been listening very attentively. Francesca has popped a note in there saying, I recommend the BBC series £10 Poms if you want a bit of an insight into Australian settlers. So that's a good tip. I do have a very quick question for Carl. I'd be really interested. I know the Open University is doing a lot of work around decolonising the curriculum. I was really interested in what you were saying there around the Australia case study. Can you just talk to us a little bit, just very briefly, around that decolonising process in the course that you've been working on?
I think this really comes under perspectives. We're very anxious that students get to use as many documents, voices, sources from each group's perspective. So we had the Aztecs in the predecessor course, but I think not enough on the Aztec Empire and Aztec perspectives on rule and on contact. So going through all of the different blocks and the themes, that's what we tried to do. I suppose that means you've got more secondary works from African, Caribbean, and other writers as well. So it's a general attempt to make sure it's as rich and varied as possible. As I said, 360 view empire, not just an empire from the ship to the shoreline.
Thank you, Carl. That's excellent. And just want to say welcome to Susie, who's finally managed to join us. Welcome, Susie. Thank you for persevering. So just to let you know, there's a widget on the screen now, and it's a multiple choice question. about which are the surprising elements in an arts history module. So if you can have a quick vote on that, we'll see what you've said after we've heard from Susie. So Susie, what's distinctive about art and critical histories?
Well, I struggled through to get here because I'm really excited to tell you that critical histories is the first dissertation module in our in arts and humanities, actually, and it's the culminating module to the new degree pathway for art history. And what's really distinctive is the fact that you as a get a chance to really stretch your wings with a dissertation, and that's about twice as long as a standard EMA that you might be used to at the end of your other modules. So it's 7,000 words. That sounds really scary. It doesn't need to be, because the whole point of the module is to set you up and guide you through to starting to develop research and then write your dissertation. So we're really excited about it, and this is something that's going to be really different for our students.
Excellent. I don't know if you've been voting on the widget. If you have, we may be able to have a quick look and see what we've been looking at. So in terms of the topics that you put in your question, Susie, which are those different elements? So you've put there different points of view and perspective. Oh, we can see the widget now, so thank you. If we can get them up on the screen. And that's it. We can't quite see the results there. I haven't got my glasses on. So different points of view, perspective, professional skills and practices. So Susie, what do you think? Thank you. So 25% of you have gone for different perspectives. And okay, and I'm just trying to read the results now. 25% of you gone for professional values, and the rest are all quite low on there. So Susie, different perspectives. How does that stand out in this module?
Well, as with all of our art curriculum, I'm trying to emphasize that there is no single way to approach, understand, look at, work with works of art. And I'm using works of art here really broadly. So I'm at architecture and design history here. So there are multiple perspectives. And one of the ways our dissertation module works with this is to point out that art historians have really changed how they think, look at and work with art over time. That process won't stop. So the generation after will do it differently too. And at any point in time, we have the benefit of past thinkers and writers. Not all of them still speak to us today, but some of them really do have something to offer. So the different perspectives in the module come partly from a quick look back about what's still useful to art history today. And the other aspect, which is in common with our other modules, is obviously taking a much more global perspective. So breaking away from thinking art with a capital A is something that only European art galleries collect today and only Europeans get to write about. So we have a much more perspective on where art from and who makes it and why.
Thank you, Susie. Hopefully everyone can hear that, because the signal's not brilliant there, but excellent, and thank you for that. So we're going to move on to Suzanne. So Suzanne, can you tell us about the new master's qualification, the new Masters in History qualification, and why should students get excited and come and join you?
Okay, yeah, the new MA History qualification started in September 2022. It has a focus on British and Irish history. It's made up of 2 modules, so A883, the MA History Part 1, and A8A4, the MA History Part 2. Part 1 focuses on developing core skills in historical research, including analysis of sources and developing your ability to communicate research ideas. For the first block, everyone studies the same material and looks at the craft of the historian, or how historians do their research. And what makes this new MA in history different is that from block 2, you specialise in the study of either early modern history, which covers around 1500 to 1750, more or less, or you can specialise in the study of modern history, which covers around 1750 to 1970. For blocks 3 and 4, you then select more specialised research themes suited to the time period that you've chosen to specialise in. So there's a lot of different options here. So these themes include political communication, how those in authority communicated to the people and how the people communicated with those in authority. We have environment and landscape history. We have violence. We have immigration to Britain and Ireland during the modern and early modern period. We have institutions, and we also have another specialist theme on the body and health. So there's really a lot of options to choose from on the MA history, and a lot of scope for students to identify a historical theme or topic that really interests and inspires them. So for part 2 of the MA history, A8A4, that's our dissertation module. So it's very different to part 1. It begins with 6 units of study materials, which help you to identify and develop a feasible dissertation topic. So the idea is that you make a really solid plan for the independent research phase of the module. So that's where you'll work on a dissertation topic that you've chosen, identified, developed, and planned for yourself. So that's a really exciting opportunity to do something that you're passionate about and to spend a substantial amount of time working on it. What makes the MA History Part 2 quite different to other history MAs, not just history MAs that we've had here in the OU, but also history MAs in general, is that we've introduced 2 different dissertation options. So students can do a standard, or I suppose traditional dissertation of 15,000 words if they want to. And then we've also introduced what we're calling a practice-based dissertation, which will give students the opportunity to develop a research product. So something that's based on their work with primary sources. So something like a data set, for example, which would be accompanied by a project report, so a kind of mini dissertation. So throughout this module, students will, they'll be working independently on their own dissertation topic, but throughout that time, they'll have support of a supervisor, and they'll also have module forums and support clinics to support them at this time as well. So it's a really exciting new MA history. It's very different. It allows students to take a range of different approaches and hopefully identify a wide range of dissertation topics. That's it.
Fantastic, thank you. Dissertations can be quite scary, especially when you're at the beginning. You've got this massive amount of words that you've got to go and start to explore. But it is one of the things we're very good at the Open University, and that's supporting people to develop those skills. And it seems great that we're giving students the opportunity to explore and choose their own topics. So now that looks really exciting. Thank you, Suzanne. That's brilliant. So last and definitely not least, we're coming to David. So, David, I'm really interested in the 2 modules you're going to talk about: the English Literature MA and the 2 options. It seems that they can either do coursework or a dissertation. So, can you explain how that works?
Thanks very much, Rob, for the invitation to talk, and thanks, folks, for coming along to listen as well. And in 5 minutes, I'm going to do my best to persuade you to do a master's in literature. I've been at the Open University for 25 years, and this is, in fact, the third master's in literature that I've worked on. And, people always say things were much better in the old days, and most of the time I think that's true. But in this case, I genuinely think this is the best module I've ever worked on by some distance, partly because the first half of our masters, the coursework part, which you have to do first, there is the most spectacular amount of material for you to study. There are, in fact, 3 masters there. There's one that focuses on an approach on books and readers, which is sort of a book history approach. There's another strand that runs all the way through, which looks at the form and genre of literary works. And then there's a third strand, which looks at the history and context, the kind of historicizing of literary works. So you are through that first half, the first half of the MA, through the coursework section, you are exposed to an amazing amount of teaching material and the most spectacular variety of books you can read, genres you can study, from fiction, popular fiction, the classics, Shakespeare's there, of course, but also, pretty much as wide a range as you can imagine, and I say quite literally 3 times as much material as we've ever produced before for a master's program. And you get supported very, very carefully, very clear structure guiding you through that. And when you get to the end of that, we hope we've equipped you with it's a kind of apprenticeship in how to be a literary critic, if you like. And by the end of the first half, the coursework, you're then equipped to move on to independent study, which is the most exciting part, because then you have an opportunity to write on the book, the author, the literary debate that is closest to your heart, what you're most passionate about. And we start off with a foundation block where 6 weeks of very intensive taught material where you generate a research proposal, and you also have an opportunity to do one of 5 options to study a monograph on, key monograph, to look at book chapters or articles about your dissertation topic. Also, we teach you how to write book reviews, how to give a public lecture on your dissertation subject, or to write for a gallery, library, archive, or museum, how you might communicate your research skills to a wider public. And then you make the transition to writing the dissertation. And there are many different types of support you'll receive in the form of online lectures, online tutorials. We've managed, there'll be a face-to-face event that you are very welcome to attend. But the most important part is the one-to-one relationship you'll develop with your tutor, with your supervisor. And we've also added in something new, which we've called dissertation surgeries, which run regularly through the thing, where you can turn up and just ask any question of your tutor, anything that you're anxious about, any skills that you think you need to develop. And really, the only limit is your own imagination. You are encouraged to choose something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you want to write about to the extent of a 14,000 word dissertation. And the amount of support that's in place, I think, is extraordinary. We start the dissertation block. We put together a 15-minute video of past students talking about, kind of giving tips on how to write a dissertation, and in many respects I think they're much better teachers than we are. They give the most amazing advice, very detailed, very nuanced, and they talk through their experience of writing a dissertation. So there's a kind of, right from the word go, a sense that you're embarking on this incredible intellectual adventure, and there are others that have gone before you, and many of them do say this is the best thing they've ever done. And I'm confident that if you choose to do this, you won't be disappointed. I think that's enough.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you, David. It's just this thought that we can get all that support to explore our passion and the things we really care about. So fantastic. Heidi, I think we've got a few comments that we can bring from the chat. I think it's been quite busy.
Yeah, it has been busy, Rob, and it's so good to see actually this. I love this session because as you described it earlier, Rob, as being a bit of a speed dating session, we have got some undergraduate students that are kind of torn between two potential subjects. So Kate, for example, I'm torn between art history and English literature as I love both, and I'm myself a visual artist, so thinking very carefully about the next choice. So I did say to her, it depends if David can sway you or whether Warren swayed you. So there's quite a bit of competition going on, which I like. So we have got a few questions. So Anne, I think this one is probably best for Warren. I've done art history modules in the past, but would like to know more about the theory criticism side. Would it be worth studying A336 now?
Well, the question is, what art history modules you've studied beforehand? So have you done any second level art history modules, or where are you coming to A336? Or how are you coming to A336?
We don't know, Warren, but we can ask to have that in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. Well, oh, crikey. I mean, obviously, Susie's the chair of A336, so she might be the person to answer that question.
So, Susie, are there any prerequisites?
Well, it depends. So you do have to keep an eye on whether you've already registered for the degree pathway, because that will have some prerequisites. If you haven't and you're pursuing a different route, then you're welcome to come in and register for 336. But do remember, it's designed as the final module in your progression through the levels. So bear that in mind in terms of level expectations. And you have a very lovely module also at level 3, which Warren knows inside out. And that's A344, which is art and its global histories. And again, that might be something of interest without the ultimate challenge of finishing a degree with a dissertation in a subject you may not have done a lot of work on before.
Okay, so is that clear enough, do you think, Heidi?
Yeah, sounds good. And I've got more questions if you want more, Rob, if we've got time.
Yeah, got time for probably one more.
Okay, one more then. So from Maureen, the MA in history sounds fascinating. Could it be undertaken with a social science background?
Yes, it could.
Hey.
It's been set up so that students coming from other disciplines get a good kind of grounding in that block 1 about the craft of the historian. So yes, we're happy to take students from other backgrounds. If you have questions, obviously, further questions, you can follow up with the student support team and so on that.
I do like a good decisive answer. That's what we'd like to hear. And of course, when you're planning your next modules, when you're looking at what you need to do next, visit the website, read the descriptions very carefully. Some of our modules are standalone and can be taken without having studied something before it. Some of our modules depend on previous learning, and it's all very clearly stated. And of course, if you have any questions or any queries, you can contact the student support teams who will talk you through all of these different options. So thank you to everyone. Believe it or not, that's the end of our speed dating session. So thank you very much for helping. And now we've been joined by Katie and Jim, and we're going to be talking about how to become a psychologist. Now, I'm not saying there's much rivalry within the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, but just before we came in, I was told, if you want sexy and interesting, come and study psychology. So there's a challenge for you. So we're going to answer this question. I want to become a psychologist. What are my options and what can I do? So I'm getting on a bit now, and I remember Robbie Coltrane as the psychologist cracker. And I'm inspired to become a psychologist. So, Jim, what are my options? What can I do?
Thanks. Can I just say I'm getting on a bit as well? And when I was an undergraduate, those Robbie Coltrane programs were on the TV, and it what got me into my area of forensic psychology initially. So I share that with you. Forensic psychology is one type of psychology. There's lots of different types of psychologists who do all sorts of different types of work. But all of those different career routes, whether it's prison psychology, educational psychology, academic research, teaching, so on, they all start with an accredited psychology degree. And there's really sort of two broad routes into that. There's the sort of open to anyone and everyone route, which is getting what you might think of as a standard psychology degree. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But there's also a sort of faster but harder, in a sense, route in for people who've already got a degree in something else and are looking for a change of career or a change of direction in their lives. And Katie's our expert on that. I think we have a slide available which shows you the degrees that we have at the university, because we do offer both of these types of pathway. So if we're able to bring that up now, that would be handy. We have 4 sort of, on the left here, normal psychology degrees, if you like. So we have the standard psychology degree, where you study core psychology and you take various options of interest that you choose as you go, and you kind of customize your degree. That's really good for people who don't have a specific career path in mind at the moment and just want to keep their options open. We also do have 3 more specialized career paths, degree paths, for people who have an idea what kind of career they want to go into. One in forensic psychology, one in social psychology, and one in psychology and counselling. All of those follow the standard OU modular structure, where you do 60 credit modules. There are 6 of them. So if you're able to find a sort of full-time workload of 20 hours per module per week and do 2 together, so that's 40 hours a week, it's like working full-time, then you can do that 2 modules at a time and get a degree in 3 years. Most students will do it 1 module at a time, studying 20 hours a week, and do it over the 6 years.
Just a quick question, Jim. How many students do we have that study at that level of intensity, effectively full-time study? Is it a large proportion, or is it fairly small?
It's actually quite a lot. I think it's round about a quarter to a third at the moment that do that. And remarkably, some of them do that whilst also working. I honestly don't know how they find the time.
Oh,
it's incredibly interesting. Yeah.
So it really is taken as an alternative to perhaps a campus university and full-time study after college for a lot of students.
Yeah, for a lot of students it is. A lot of students prefer the flexibility of doing it part-time, especially if they've got work or other life commitments. And of course you can, you'd obviously have to talk to a student support team, but you can, if you find it's getting too much and you want to drop down to part-time study, that's obviously an option. With the Open University, we're flexible to that kind of thing.
So if somebody starts off doing 2 modules at once, they can easily drop down. I was about to say increase and drop down, but you wouldn't increase from 2. But yeah, you can always drop down to the 1 quite easily.
Yeah, and an advisor will tell you, it's usually fairly obvious like which is the most sensible one to sort of drop and come back to later on, because they are designed to be studied in a particular order. So one of the modules we'll talk about in a little more detail at the moment is designed to be the first one. So obviously you wouldn't drop that one and keep the second one. You would drop the second one and keep the first one.
Fantastic. Okay, so Katie, what about the other option then? So we've had a quick chat about the undergraduate pathway. So what's your pathway? And I think we'll want to see that graphic again in a second as we talk through this.
Yeah, so thanks, Rob. I'm here to talk about the Master's Conversion qualification that we have at the Open University. And this is a relatively new qualification. It started last year with our first module, D810. And our second module in the qualification starts this year, D811. They have to be studied, both of them have to be studied together. They have to be studied, so they both have to be studied for the qualification, but they cannot be studied at the same time. So you have to do D810 first, followed by D811. And the reason is it's an intensive process to get to the qualification, and it's only 2 years, and that's why we've liked to pack everything in. But the difference between the qualification that I'm on, the conversion, and the one that Jim was talking about is that you can come to the conversion with a degree in another subject. So as long as you have an honours degree at the 2-2 level or above, you can come and join our conversion qualification.
Wow, I must admit, I've been sat here. So I did my degree with the OU, and I was sitting here thinking, I'm quite happy being a tutor. I don't want to study. And then when we started to prepare this, and I thought, ooh, psychology conversion. I thought that sounds quite interesting. So if you get some angry emails from Mrs. Moore from Leicestershire, it's all your fault for this session. But but no, thank you.
It's incredibly interesting, Rob.
Absolutely, it's fascinating. I think, Heidi, we're having a few comments and people are responding to our questions and comments about psychology. So what's happening in the chat? What are people saying?
They sure are, Rob. And yeah, and I'm with you. I thought that I was done with study for the time being. I just finished my postgrad, and now I'm thinking there are so many choices. I'm still paying off my government loan from this one. So Hannah says, I'm already doing psychology. And Hannah would like to know Jim's take on the next steps once she's finished the BSc, considering forensic, but the adolescent side of it. Would the pathway be different for this than adult forensic psychology? Great question.
That is a great question. And to be honest, I don't really know the answer about a different specialism for adolescents in forensic psychology. A lot of forensic psychologists will work in the prison service, and obviously some of that includes young offender institutions. More and more forensic psychologists are working in the NHS, actually, in forensic mental health care. And again, that obviously there are adolescents as well as adults within that area. I think probably the pathway is still going to be initially the same, so that after you've graduated, you'll do an accredited forensic master's, which is very much more focused on the clinical side of forensic psychology, which I should say is not what I do. My specialism's in eyewitnesses and jury decision making. It's a very different aspect of the field. And I would have thought once you've completed that master's, it would then be a case of looking for work experience and placements and sort of any specialised on-the-job training that would be offered as part of that. But yeah, the first step would be finish the degree and then look for those accredited forensic masters.
Perfect. Any other questions? Probably got time for one more question before we move on to the next part, Heidi.
Sure. Yeah. So one from Patrina. I'm currently studying environmental studies and would love to study environmental psychology. Are there any plans to introduce something like this at any stage at the OU?
It's a really new area, I think, in psychology. And obviously it's becoming more important to everybody. Possibly on the radar, there are some things coming, but not in the near future.
I mean, I'll qualify that slightly because, sorry, I missed the name of the person who asked the question.
Patrina.
Katrina. So Katrina's already studying environmental sciences. So if Katrina was taking Katie's pathway, which would be finish the environmental sciences degree and then do a conversion, that Katie's pathway is very much focused around core areas. And at the moment, environmental psychology isn't a core area, it's an optional area. In the sort of normal undergraduate route, we are building some of that in. And in fact, my module does have a unit. It's just one little bit at the end because it's not a core area, but we do have a little bit of environmental psychology in that. But it wouldn't be at this stage a whole specialism, simply because it's not part of the accreditation criteria for degrees yet.
So one of the things I would recommend is, of course, I would recommend that Patrina does the conversion qualification to become an accredited psychologist. And at that point, she could then go on and do some research into environmental psychology or do work in a company or an organization that does that. But actually, it's getting that accreditation that's probably the first step that she would need to consider.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So just a last few minutes, you just want to quickly talk about the new modules that have been introduced. So Jim, D110, first step into psychology, new module. Tell us a few bits about that and what's different, what's exciting about that module.
Well, first step is a crucial point. It's designed for anyone to be able to take. So it's literally the very first thing you do as part of a psychology degree. Obviously, we're aware that some people are coming in with, say, A-level psychology and so on. So we haven't designed it to be sort of boring for those students, if you like. We appreciate that those students don't want to feel like they're wasting their time in their first module. But if you have no prior study of psychology, it's really designed around that. We're covering The core areas, so biological psychology, things like how the brain works, developmental psychology, changes across the lifespan, particularly focusing on early childhood, social psychology, how people interact with each other, individual differences, so the similarities and differences between people, personality, IQ, things like that, and cognitive psychology, which is sort of more my area, which is things like memory and decision making. So those are the sort of big core areas that are part of accreditation, and we cover all of those. But we don't want to just sort of go through, right, we're doing some biology this week, right, we're doing some social this week. So we've framed them really in terms of real world issues and real world contexts that people will have life experience of, will know through the media and things like that. So for example, with cognitive psychology, when we teach about memory, we teach about eyewitness memory, so which also actually conveniently links into our forensic psychology strand, of course. So people will have experiences of seeing events, even if they haven't witnessed a crime, they'll have seen events that they've tried to remember and tell people about later. So it's a very sort of similar process. When we teach social psychology, for example, we look at attitudes and persuasion and so on, and we use the field of politics to talk about that. So how do people do in-group and out-group construction within political discourses and things like that. So a lot of things that people can really relate to. We obviously have some topics in there that are very focused on our counselling and forensic pathways, as well as the social psychology. And as I mentioned a moment ago, some things that students have asked for over the years. So things like environmental psychology, where we can kind of sneak them in a bit. Environmental psychology is an interesting one because it does draw on aspects of social psychology and aspects of cognitive psychology and so on, and just applies them to that environmental realm. And as if that wasn't enough, we also teach how psychologists know things. So there's a lot of how we do research, and that obviously for students who are going on to do the full degree, at some point they will be doing research of their own. So we're building those skills and that knowledge in right from the off. And I could literally talk for hours about this. So you're going to need to rein me in a bit, I'm afraid, Rob.
No, that's fine. We just want to give Katie a couple of minutes because you've got the brand new module, the second part of the conversion. So if you can give us a quick intro to that, but also tell us, how is it going to help us understand how our brain does things and how we approach things?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, some of the things that are on the conversion are exactly the same as what Jim has said. We look at individual differences, including things like motivation and personality. And we also cover developmental psychology on our module. And the other core areas have already been covered in the first part of the conversion qualification on D810. But the really exciting part of D811 is that students get to do their own independent piece of research that they submit for their dissertation at the end of the module. So that is a really exciting part of the module, as they get to experience what it's like to be a psychologist. We're giving people the opportunity to experience being a psychologist, and because the students that come on to D811 already have those skills in study because they've already done a degree, it means that we're really able to hit the psychology hard right from the offset and go much deeper into some of the subject areas and the sort of critical analysis and evaluation of the research than you would find on the undergraduate programme.
Brilliant. And I think somebody made the comment earlier that for environmental psychology, you could actually bring that into your dissertation and use that as a focus.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we've been really keen to do on the conversion is that whilst we study psychology in these sort of pigeonhole areas of individual differences or developmental psychology, one of the things that we're all really keen to do within psychology is to think about all of the other influences. So how your brain works is not just how your brain works, but it's also about all the social influences and the developmental influences that you've had. And it's also about, the integration of all of the different factors that influence your behaviour.
Thank you. That's you've definitely given me something to think about now, because I must admit, when I did my degree, I did think, shall I do psychology or not? And I chose not to, and sometimes I've regretted it. And now I'm thinking, not too late, we can go back. So fantastic.
We look forward to seeing your name on the student list, Rob.
Absolutely. Mind you, if you're anything like me, there's nothing worse than than tutoring other tutors. I've been there, done that, and it's always challenging. So Heidi, any other comments from the chat? What are people saying at the moment?
Yeah, I've actually got another question for Jim, if that's okay. So this is from
yeah.
Hannah.
Sure.
So she says it's slightly off topic, but can Jim recommend any books or videos to understand how juries work / eyewitness testimony, his side of forensic psychology? It's a current extracurricular interest of hers. So any recommendations would be most welcome.
Okay, so in
Thanks,
2 minutes,
Hannah.
Jim.
I was loath to recommend very specific reading like that. I mean, if you go back to the sort of very classic 1970s, there was quite a lot of jury stuff written. Going back into the 80s and 90s, Vicky Bruce's book on Recognizing Faces isn't just about eyewitness recognition, but obviously it covers that. I would probably, if it was me, I'd look to something more general, to be honest. So a lot of the problems with jury decision making are about jurors trying to make sense of things and using what are called cognitive heuristics, so kind of mental shortcuts to try and reach decisions. And obviously that can introduce biases. So I'd probably look to something like Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which it isn't specifically about those, but it covers cognitive heuristics and biases in a really nice way. And you can see how certain elements are linked to that type of decision making, particularly decision making under uncertainty, because that's what jurors are facing. They're facing uncertainty. They don't know what the real truth is. They've got a complex set of information that's sometimes contradictory that they've got to try and make sense of. So yeah, I mean, Kahneman's, it's very readable as well. Plus he won a Nobel Prize, so can't go wrong.
Thank you, Jim, and well done for keeping that really complicated answer quite short. Excellent. So thank you, Katie and Jim, for joining me. And we should have a poll to see whether the soft lighting of Jim's video adds to the interest and sexiness of this particular session.
It's just a very old camera, I'm afraid.
So I'd just like to say welcome to my final group of guests, and we're going to be talking about global issues and how the new modules in social sciences and global studies help to address them. So welcome, Jonquil, Kevin, Edward, Andy and Dan. So really good to have you all with us. Those of you who are watching at the moment, there should be a widget on the screen, and this is a word cloud. And what we're going to do is, after my guests have given a brief introduction to their modules, we're going to ask them how their modules address key global issues, but you're going to choose the issues. So in the word cloud, write down the global issue, or the 3 global issues that are impacting you the most, that you want some answers on. And then we're going to come to Heidi in a little while, and she will select one of those, and we're going to drop it in front of the audience and see how their modules deal with it. Okay, so get cracking on the word cloud, and in the meantime, we're going to have an elevator pitch from each of the teams. They've got 2 minutes, and I will stop them after 2 minutes, to tell us about their new module. So Jonquil, you're going to go first. In 2 minutes, what's exciting, what's new about D217?
Okay, so D217, Essential Economics, is our new Level 2 Core Economics module. And in it, you'll learn to use the tools of economics to understand the world and how to tackle the problems that we have today. So if we look at the world today, it's dominated by policymakers and global institutions that, broadly speaking, subscribe to the doctrine of free markets. So as you might expect, D217 will teach you the theory called neoclassical economics that underpins that free market doctrine. But we live in a world that is now very different from the era when neoclassical economics was developed. So free markets are meant to deliver through intense competition the best social outcomes. But clearly, that's not the world we live in today. So today we see markets dominated by large, often multinational corporations. We see huge levels of income and wealth inequality, and we also see how economic growth is damaging the environment and causing climate change. So clearly, neoclassical economics doesn't have all the answers. So D217, along with all our OU economics modules, teaches economic pluralism. So you'll learn about competing theories and ideas and methods that will give a more realistic look at what's happening in the world and what tools and policy options are available. And we also situate economics. We say that it can't operate in a vacuum. It needs to go hand in hand with other disciplines like psychology, sociology, and the environmental sciences. So what you'll get out of D217 is an economic toolkit that's really equipped to understand and tackle the real world problems that we have today. Thank you, Rob.
Well done. Slightly over the 2 minutes by about 10 seconds, but excellent. Well done. So we're going to come on to Kevin. So Kevin, your 2 minutes start now.
Hi, everyone. So we have a new level 3 sociology module called Social Theory, Change in Social Worlds. And in that, we look at lots of very innovative and exciting ways of understanding the world, which sociologists call social theories. And they help us to think differently and critically about the world and to try and stimulate our sociological imagination. We take a particularly unique look at social theories. We see how they can help us make sense of 4 big themes, and that's work, culture, everyday life, and social control. And within those big themes, we also explore numerous smaller themes, ranging from precarious work to nationalism, from city living to big data and surveillance. And you'll hear from lots of diverse sociologists from around the globe on how they use social theories to shed light on rapidly changing social worlds, as well as how a lot of inequalities and injustices remain or take kind of slightly new forms. And finally, we ask and we help you to engage in what we call theoretically informed reflections. So we help you to use the theories and the conceptual tools that you learn to try and make sense of the issues in your life that you're interested in, or the current affairs that you're interested in. So yeah, exciting times.
Thank you, Kevin. Perfectly timed. And Edward, get set for your 2 minutes. So off you go. 2 minutes, starting now.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so I'm here to tell you about our new and exciting Masters in International Relations. It starts in September this year, so registration closes on the 10th of August for part 1 of that degree, which is D818. Now, the MA is actually made up of 2 modules, 2 big 90-credit modules, D818 and D828. And the latter of those focuses primarily on the production of a postgraduate dissertation. I'm going to quickly talk about D818 here. It's the module I'm in charge of. So this is the first part of the MA. It's formed around 6 blocks, and all of these address what we define as key global challenges that are of concern to the discipline of IR, but I'd also say to social sciences more broadly and other areas of philosophy, history, and other disciplines as well. And we've based this around 6 key real-world questions, which are: how can international divisions be understood? So that looks at economic and territorial divisions in world politics. The challenges posed by rising powers. So that looks at change in the international order and international system and the rise of China and other powers. We've then got 2 blocks on security, which look at how security is produced in the international system. So what is security? And then global threats to survival. So it covers things like environmental crises, global health crises. The 5th block is asks the question: how does the crisis of democracy affect international relations? So that looks at things like populism, nationalism, democratic backsliding, that kind of thing. And the final block ends us on a more of a philosophical note, looking at whether we can move towards ideas of a global ethic. So it looks at ideas around humanitarian intervention and things like that. So if you want to know why or how conflict and cooperation happen internationally, how global events and changes in the international environment can be understood, then this is, the kind of degree of view. As it's postgraduate level, there's a much greater emphasis on independent learning. You still got all of the first class teaching material, as always with the OU, but we want to empower students to take control of their own learning here. So you get a chance to pursue your own areas of interest. So we provide a lot of optionality in terms of the assessment. Students can choose their own areas of interest that they want to pursue. Got a lot of research methods training in each block as well. So we're, creating, really good research skills there to take on to your next module. So all works towards preparing you for the Part 2 dissertation module, and that uses some really innovative teaching, incorporating research masterclasses and the like as well to help you prepare for your dissertation ultimately. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Edward. We're going to hear from Andrew in a second, and once we've heard from Andrew, we'll have a look at how the word cloud is collecting, how it's building, and you'll still have a chance to add to it. So once we've heard from Andrew in his 2 minutes, then we'll look at the word cloud. So Andrew, 2 minutes. This is your elevator pitch.
Thanks, Rob. So where do I start? There are so many exciting things about D113, Global Challenges, Doing Social Science, it's called. I suppose the first exciting thing is that it's a new kind of era for level 1 modules in social sciences. What we're doing is we're giving students the chance to specialize in their particular discipline. So previously, all social science students kind of studied all the same material and then went off into their qualification pathways for many of our qualifications. Now the OU is really trying to give people the opportunity to specialize, and on this module you'll get that chance. The idea of the module is to look at 3 big global challenges that obviously we're facing, which we're probably going to talk about some of them a bit later, so I won't go into them in a lot of detail, but the climate crisis is one of them, the challenge of digital technology, and the challenge of the legacies of enslavement and colonialism. So they're the big global challenges, and within that we break that into different module themes about the local and the global and how do they relate to each other, power and knowledge, how do those 2 key ideas relate to each other, and also social justice and inequality. So those are the themes we look through these challenges through. Another exciting element of the module is the fact that we look at this as how can we do something about these challenges as social scientists? And we look to kind of empower the students in that area, what we call change makers. So students will really get the opportunity to learn how they can get involved in really shaping the world in their own little way, in a positive way. And that leads into the final exciting development from this module, which is that students get the chance to write a report on their global challenge, which is their final EMA final exercise that they do. So they get to write a report, might be for a big organization, addressing one of these global challenges.
Wow.
Is that okay?
Thank you, Andy. Perfect. That was great. So we'll have a very quick look at the word cloud, see what topics are at the top at the moment. Remember, you've still got a couple of minutes if you want to vote. You can vote a number of times. You're not limited. So if your topic's not there, you want to vote it. So it floats to the top. One of the things we're definitely seeing as a trend now is this opportunity for you to explore what interests you. In most of the modules we've talked about today, there's this element of finding your favourite area of study and exploring it further with support. So Dan, last but not least in this session, tell us about your module. You've got 2 minutes.
Thanks very much, Rob. And yeah, it follows on quite nicely there from what you were saying about the ability to pick a topic and look at it independently. So DD315, Researching Current Issues in Criminology. As the title of the module suggests, this module is focused on asking students to look at current but enduring issues in criminology and how we research them. Now, the big feature running through DD315 is that students will be working on their own dissertation project. Now, this project will use secondary sources, so that's things like data sets, academic publications, non-governmental reports, any of these sorts of things. And through this, they'll be exploring their own research topic and question relating to criminology. So this is a really exciting opportunity for students to focus on something that they're really interested in or matters to them. Now, to support students with their dissertations, they're also encouraged to think about questions to do with criminological knowledge production, as well as responses to crime and harm. So the first of these, we ask students to think about the production of criminological knowledge. Now that's what we think we know about topics to do with crime and harm. And we ask them to think about where that knowledge comes from, who's involved in making that knowledge, who's excluded from making that knowledge, and then what kind of implications are there about that, who benefits from that kind of knowledge, and who's harmed by that kind of knowledge production. And then we also ask them to look at the way that we respond to crime and harm, and tend to do that within lots of societies globally. So, for example, through things like policing or prisons. And we look at those kind of responses again to explore who's benefiting from those and who is harmed by those. But we also want students to think about why these persist, even though in some cases they're really harmful, and not just see what problems there are, but what alternatives there might be. Now, we're encouraging students to think about those because we think that those are really important things, not only in thinking about criminological knowledge production and in responses to crime and harm, but also for thinking about criminological research itself. So they're not divorced from carrying out our own research projects. In fact, they're really important when we think about our own research projects, whether it be local, such as policing in our local areas, or global issues such as pollution in our oceans. And in doing this, we hope that students are encouraged to think critically about topics in criminology. But most importantly, I think we hope that students are able to explore a topic that they find really interesting and that they find really engaging. That's a really important thing about DD315 for us.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Dan. It's I'm loving this theme that not that we write our own module, but we get support to study and research the things that we're most interested in. So we're going to come to Heidi now. So Heidi, what global issue does the chat want us to explore? So what's coming up?
Really interesting. So just a quick comment from Hannah, who said, okay, I need to stop coming to these showcases. I keep finding more modules I want to do. So that's what you and I were saying earlier, Rob, wasn't it? So yeah, just having a look. If you haven't had a chance yet to add to the word cloud, just you can pop in. It will automatically update itself. So some really fascinating themes coming up, which I'm going to go to. One thing that I find absolutely fascinating is that we're not seeing on there at the moment, Rob, anything to do with AI, because on many of our Student Hub live sessions, AI is always this great fit, and that one's not showing up, which I find fascinating. And also, for the first time in what feels like forever, no mention of COVID-19, the pandemic, which again is really fascinating. So I think the most popular, so it's the wrong choice of words, but the most pressing, I would say, theme concern for our guests, inequality, number one. So one that we can put to our panel.
Okay, so panel, it's your opportunity to tell us what is there in your modules that helps us to address this global issue of inequality. Who'd like to go first? John Quill.
Okay. So in D217, one of the module themes is social justice. And the module is divided into two parts, macroeconomics and microeconomics. And one of the things we're doing in the macroeconomic part, which looks at how the economy as a whole works, is we're looking at the inequality implications of things like monetary policy, not just the inequalities within countries, but also how monetary policy as practiced by the global north impacts on countries of the global south. And then in the microeconomic section, we look at things like how governments use tax and benefit policies, or how they can use them in order to address inequality. So lots on inequality in D217.
Excellent, thank you. So from an economics point of view, so anybody got a different view from their module? So is that Kevin? Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, so inequality is a pretty key concern for sociologists, and it features throughout the module, really. So, for example, in the first block on work, we look at inequalities in housework and in care work, which are very interesting and important, but they're not always considered as work. So they sometimes get overlooked in terms of society and policy, to the detriment of those who do most of that kind of work, often women. We also look at the huge rise in what's called precarious work, so essentially very insecure work, where people get paid per delivery or per piece. The organisation of that work through digital platforms, so think of Uber or Deliveroo. And we look at the experiences of those so-called gig workers and how that contributes to increasing inequalities in income, in life chances, how tricky it is to plan your life when your work is very insecure. And I'll just say one other thing, which is that the way we try to think about inequality, we use this idea of intersectionality. So we think about inequalities not just in terms of one social division, such as class or race or gender, but also about how they all interact with each other in very distinctive ways. So what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, depends on what your social class is, depends upon what your race is. So we think about inequality in quite a nuanced way, rather than in terms of a single axis of oppression or domination.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And those of you in the chat, if you want to give us your views on inequality and your experiences, perhaps. I've got time for one more person on inequality, then we'll ask for another question. Anybody else want? Yeah. So is that Andy? Yeah.
It's Eddie.
Oh, sorry, Eddie. Sorry. So
Yeah.
Eddie.
I'll just jump in quickly. So yeah, I mean, it's something it's quite intrinsic to what we teach in the MA. Certainly in the first module and the first block of that, where we're using international divisions as a way of really teaching how global inequalities, particularly in the economic domain as well. So there's a split between sort of territorial divisions and economic divisions. And so we teach a lot of stuff around measures of inequality, looking really at the sort of global, macroeconomic level as well. But a lot of this is predicated on how this relates to historical experiences of colonialism, so the exploitative practices of empire and things like that. And because we're a postgraduate level module, we do a little bit of disciplinary navel gazing, I suppose you could say, as well, and look at the inequalities within the discipline as well, of course, and underrepresented voices. So we don't, start off with the main sort of Western rooted theories and ways of understanding international relations. We bring in post-colonial perspectives right from the outset as well to emphasise underrepresented and global South voices as well. So we thought that was really important thing to emphasise in the module itself.
Thank you, Eddie. And I know Dan did put his hand up. So what we'll do, Dan, we'll let you have the final word on inequality. And
brilliant. Thanks, Rob. Yes, so I think for us within DD315, so through the module themes of the module, so we've got legitimacy, denial, and then accountability. These all kind of touch on ideas to do with inequality, whose voices are heard, whose voices are excluded, what kinds of implications does that have? And then also not only are people as individuals held to account through these systems, but how do we then hold these kinds of systems or ways of doing things to account? What are the problematic things about those in terms of not only whose voices get heard and whose don't, but also whose kind of faces the consequences of these systems and who is able to navigate them in ways that are actually quite uneven and unequal in lots of ways. So we bring in this kind of question of power that kind of underlines this broader theme of inequality throughout the module, really.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And I think we've run out of time for questions now. It's amazing how quickly the time goes. So thank you, everyone, for your contributions. I must admit, I've got a mean streak. I do like to see you all put on the spot and have to think up answers you can't prepare. That's a mean part of me. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed that. Heidi, I'll come to you for any final thoughts from the chat.
Yeah, quite a few people have been engaging in the chat. Lots of interesting conversations that are going on there. But yeah, because we're short on time, I won't put any more questions to the panel. But thanks to everyone that's engaged in the chat. And hopefully you enjoyed using the word cloud as well. I certainly like using that one. It's a great way of capturing everyone's thoughts and ideas together. So yeah, really great to chat to everyone today.
Okay, thank you. And we really do value all of your input, everybody who's joined us today. Please remember the feedback form that's available to fill in. It does make a massive difference to us. At a time when everybody's fighting for resources, we need to make sure that we can bring you as many topics and discussions as you want. And the feedback form really does give us the opportunity to go back and say, we want to cover this, we want to do something on that. So please fill it in. It makes a massive difference. Just a quick shout out if you're stuck for things to do. Some of our Student Hub live events. Tonight we've got our end of year party. Isabella's hosting that with a number of guests, and I'm going to be joining you in the audience for that one. So I'm going to be taking part and heckling from the sidelines tonight. Then on the 29th, on Thursday, we've got a session with some of my colleagues from the Faculty of Business and Law, and they're going to be talking through how they create new modules and how they integrate their research so that you've got the most up-to-the-minute content that you can work with. Then on the 4th of July, we're looking at studying with limited access. So not everybody can always get onto the internet, and our module teams put some effort into giving alternative options. And we're going to be talking to some of my colleagues from the Students in Secure Environments team and talk about how we adapt modules so that they can be studied in prison. And those adaptations can then help us to support those who don't have the access they normally have. Then we're looking at the study sessions on using other people's ideas, learning from feedback, creative note-taking, and academic communications. We've got lots happening in July. We've referred to it as our boot camp. It's for those of you who've finished your modules, finished your EMAs, and you're waiting for something to do. So check out some of our sessions coming up. So a big thank you again to all of my guests today. Remember, the recordings will be available after this session, so you can go back and check out your favourite things. I've really enjoyed this morning, so thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Cheers and bye-bye.